Welcome back to Slice and Dice, the e-commerce podcast by us here, the team at ClickSlice. I'm Josh, the founder of ClickSlice, and I'm joined by
Richard, and I head up our Google Ads team.
Awesome. Well, welcome to the podcast, Richard. It's your first time on here.
Good to be here, yeah.
Matching as well.
Exciting.
Black
All
on
black.
So in today's episode, what I wanted to discuss is budgets related to Google Ads. Let's be honest, right? There's so many brands out there that want to run Google Ads for those stores, and no one really knows where to start. How much should they allocate? £2,000, £5,000, £10,000 a month. So if you could share some insight into that, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, so this is a really hot topic, and when we speak to our clients, it's normally, or prospective clients, one of the first things they tend to ask is, what budget should I allocate? And really, that's not the question that they should be leading with. You should arrive at your budget after considering other factors, and the budget should emerge from considering these other metrics. So we always advise to clients to think about their fulfillment capabilities. So how many products do they, or what's their stock levels rather? How many products of any given range do they have to send out per month? And also their fulfillment capabilities. If they've only got a small fulfillment center, they can only obviously manage certain number of sales per month. So yeah, that should be one side of the puzzle. The other side of the puzzle should be how much can they afford to spend on each sale. So if they know that each sale on average for a particular product is worth, let's say hypothetically £100, they might deduce that after considering their margins, they can spend £10 to acquire a customer for that product. So once you've established those two metrics, that's when you can start working backwards and arrive at your monthly budget.
So start backwards, essentially.
Yeah.
And I think too many brands just don't do that. I get it from a business perspective. Like, you have products you want to sell, and you're like, look at my profit and loss sheet. How much can I spend? £2,000, £3,000. And they say, yeah, that's my budget. And they kind of wonder why they don't get results. So they don't even know if it's feasible at that point.
Yeah, I think there's a tendency for businesses to kind of pick an arbitrary round figure. They think, okay, well, yeah, why don't we start at £5,000 a month? But that's not a particularly sort of scientific approach. And obviously it's a performance marketing channel, so you want to try and be as kind of data driven as possible.
Yeah. It's so interesting you say that. I had a call last week actually with a client for SEO, or a potential client I should say, and we agreed on a budget, and then he came back a week later and was like, can we actually reduce it by £200 just so it fits in with our balance sheet? It's like, you're missing the point here. And of course, different industries require different budgets because of different level of competition, right? So in your experience, how should industries, or how should businesses react and change their budget based on the industry they're targeting?
Yeah, I think obviously it's driven mainly by the margins in your industry. Some verticals in e-commerce have, high fashion, for example, have much higher margins than maybe lower price items where you've got to be much more on top of your return on ad spend. But I think a mistake that lots of our prospective clients and clients fall into is trying to kind of compete with other competitors in that space, and that's not really a kind of healthy approach to take to performance marketing, because it's almost a bit of a vanity kind of metric to focus on. Oh, we're above our competitors. So you should just focus on what works for your business, and that can be you might be competing against I don't know, say you're a direct-to-consumer e-commerce company. Your margins for each sale are typically going to be stronger for that same product perhaps being sold, or a similar product being sold on a marketplace. So Amazon might be marketing a very similar product to you, but they're only getting a percentage of that that's like a commission, sort of, because they're a platform. So you would typically have a kind of wider margins to play with. So you shouldn't get caught up too much with what your competitors are doing. You can just focus on the metrics that work for your business.
I mean, what you said about people, I want my ad to be at the top. Everyone used to do that back in the day.
Yeah.
I hold my hand up. I was one of those when I first started the agency. I wanted my ad to be number one, and sometimes it's not always the best thing, because sometimes people click it by accident as they're trying to scroll, and then they're hitting back, and then you're wasted your ad spend essentially. So
sometimes you can pay disproportionately more to be in that top position. It just doesn't actually make financial sense. And we have some clients who, even though we tell them how this doesn't really make sense, they still got it in their mind that they want to. And that there is obviously, although it's performance marketing, there's a bit of a brand perception that comes into performance marketing, and some clients like that sort of brand perception of being on top, so to speak.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. So clarifying what you said in terms of budget, right? It's best to work backwards. You don't always need to be number one. You should start with the data and kind of work that way, right? So what about seasonal trends, right? Because especially Black Friday is massive. Imagine Christmas, New Year's. If you sell maybe a lot of summer products, summer's gonna be a massive time of the year for you. So how should budgets, or how should businesses, I should say, adjust their budgets to accommodate different seasonal trends?
So we always find that people, it's another trap that our clients fall into, is thinking, okay, it's Christmas, so let's actively allocate more budget to a campaign. But really, you should actually just let the demand dictate the budget. So if you know that your metrics are aligned and your performance, so if you've got a target ROAS, and we'll cover what that means shortly. If you've got your target ROAS set and you're performing, you're generating sales within that return on ad spend, you should in theory, you shouldn't have a budget, because as long as you can, let's assume you've got an infinite supply of products to inventory to sell, you shouldn't let budget kind of dictate your sales volumes if you're working within a return on ad spend that works for your business. So really, if, let's say, in a month that might not be particularly high demand for a certain industry, there's nothing wrong with technically having your budget set within the account at a much higher level, and it will never reach that because there's not the demand there, but you're operating at a return on ad spend that works. And then when seasonality kicks in, like Christmas, you should stick within those return on ad spend kind of targets that you've set, but the natural demand of the industry will cause your budgets to inflate, and you should be comfortable with that if it's profitable. But obviously there are some other factors, so it's not uncommon obviously for a client to say, we understand what you've just said, but we actually can't spend more than this amount this month or whatever, in which case obviously we oblige and we'll put that hard budget in place.
I think what we see from the clients who manage at the agency, right, most businesses, it's not really a Google Ads budget capacity problem, it's fulfillment, like how many products in stock, like you said. So often it's quite interesting when clients come to us, say, what's the budget, what's the max I can spend? It's really a better question, is like, what is the maximum amount of products you can ship a month? Because if you're limited, it doesn't really matter what the maximum market share
and
is.
And also
out there.
What's the search demand for your products as well. So you might have loads of inventory and the capability to fulfill a really high number of orders, but if the search demand's not there, then there's no good saying to us, we've got £5 million a month to spend on budget, because you're not going to be able to spend it even if you want. So there's lots of other factors to take into account rather than just the idea of a budget that you have in your mind.
In your previous answer, one of your previous answers actually, you mentioned ROAS as a metric. Can you clarify what ROAS is for those who are potentially unaware and are listening to the podcast?
Yeah, it's really important that we get this clarified, actually. So it's the most important metric to focus on for any ecom brand.
The most important.
Yeah, the most, without a shadow of a doubt. And it doesn't matter what platform you're operating on. Other platforms might use a different kind of terminology for it, but it kind of all means the same thing. And really, in a Google Ads perspective, it stands for return on ad spend. And that's basically like a performance marketing version of saying return on investment. So for it basically means for every pound or dollar that you spend on advertising, how many pounds or dollars are you generating in revenue? And obviously e-commerce is all about revenue. So you want to, again, work backwards to arrive at that figure. So a ROAS, if someone says, we're achieving a ROAS of 5, for example, it means that they're generating £5 or dollars for every pound or dollar they spend on advertising. So if they said the ROAS is 10, then it means they're generating 10 pounds or dollars. So and obviously in any given industry, an achievable ROAS would be, or a kind of realistic ROAS would vary depending on the particular kind of industry that you're operating in.
So what would you say is a kind of guide that a brand should look at? Like, if I'm running Google Ads, I should be looking for a ROAS between X and X. Like, what would that figure be?
I would, again, it is a little bit of a how long is a piece of string question, but we generally try to push towards a ROAS of around about 10, and you're doing pretty well if you're. We have clients operating at that. Some higher, but then equally we have some clients who are operating about a 3 or a 4, and for them that works because they've got really good margins on their products. So yeah, it really does depend. And yeah, people should just focus on really figuring out what their margins are, and then using that to determine what they can afford to spend, or what ROAS they should be targeting. And that's something that we always try to clarify with clients before we kind of start on any campaign.
No, also, I think that's really important though, because so many brands are just stuck on what's the CPC, how much am I paying per click, is it £5 a click, is it £10 a click, and like you said, it's completely the wrong metric. So no, it's really good to shed some light on that. So once people do know what budget they should be allocating, right, there's obviously different types of campaigns in Google Ads. You have search, shopping, performance, max. So how should your budget differentiate across those different campaign types?
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, talking of campaign types, I'm sure there's so much to cover there, and we should probably do an episode on that at some stage, because we could talk endlessly about the different campaign types. So we won't delve too deeply into what they are at this stage, and we'll assume the listeners have maybe a rough understanding of the different campaign types. The 3 that tend to be used mostly at the moment for ecom brands are search, shopping, and PMax, or to give it its proper name, Performance Max, with the latter being like the most recent campaign type that Google seems to be putting most emphasis on at the moment, especially for ecom brands. So as far as allocating budget between those networks or those campaign types, you should really, and you'll notice a theme with my answers here, as in focusing on the numbers. And so yeah, you should be, once they've been running for a while and you've got some insights into how the different campaign types are performing, that should be one signal that should influence where you might want to, or like, distribute more of your budget to, and perhaps cut back some of your budget and reallocate it to the better performing campaign types. But it's important to bear in mind that with Performance Max, you're covering shopping and search within Performance Max.
Like so
there's a bit of overlap. So if you're saying, oh, let's allocate, I don't know, an extra 5k per month into Performance Max, some of that is gonna end up in search anyway, and shopping. So it's not a sort of clear-cut answer, so to speak. But to summarize, I'd say just be driven by performance. And if you're seeing a really strong ROAS in one area, then put some of your additional budget there. And I think we say this to clients a lot as far as distributing and spreading your spend across the widest amount of ad inventory as possible can be beneficial, because you're not concentrating. Like if you wanted to spend, let's say, 10k per month just in London, just on one product type, and just between, I don't know, certain hours of the day, for example, like you're having to be really aggressive within. So you're only reaching a certain or a limited audience, but you're reaching 100% of that audience because you're bidding really aggressively, which means your ROAS will be harmed as a result. So we try to advise clients, where it makes sense, of course, like to spread your budget as much as possible. And that's where, to answer your question about where to distribute budget across different networks, if you can try to kind of distribute it across as many as possible, as long as it makes sense, then that would be our advice.
Yeah, I think that's actually really good to note, because I remember when I asked you about running Google ads for ClickSlice, and I was like, let's just target London and just do SEO. And he was like, no, it's better to spread ourselves across the UK, market ourselves as Google ads, digital PR, all the services we offer essentially. And yeah, it worked out very, very well for us. So yeah, really good advice there. So once brands understand what budgets they should be allocating and they know where they're spending it, whether it's performance match, search or shopping, right? How often should they be reviewing the Google ads budget to determine whether is this sufficient enough? Is this too much? Is it not enough?
Yeah, I think it is something that a question that we get quite a lot, and it's a bit of a flawed question, which I'm sure is why you raised it to highlight the fact that people tend to focus on this maybe a bit too much, because the budget itself should not guide your decision making. It should be the performance, and that should just be it shouldn't be too rigid with things and like, oh, we have to review after it should be a kind of perhaps a more a looser approach. So if you notice, and obviously there are external factors that you can't account for. Perhaps you might have supply chain issues that cause a product to go out of stock, and you need to like really cut back your budget because you haven't got inventory to fulfill. And they're things that you might not be able to account for that far in advance. So you just need to remain flexible. That's the one thing that we always advise to clients is remain flexible and be willing to kind of be guided by external factors and also by how things are performing. If we see that like a client has said to us, oh, we can make this work at a ROAS of, let's say, 5, and we're achieving a ROAS of 7 or 8 for them, it can often make sense for them to increase their budget, which would increase the volume of sales, but it typically the higher volume of sales will reduce your return on ad spend slightly. But a client might be willing to do that as long as it's still profitable for them, and that would be a good example where you'd want to increase the budget kind of on the fly because you've noticed the performance justifies it.
Awesome. So you just touched on scaling when you was answering that question actually. So is there anything else brands should consider when they're looking to scale the ecom campaigns?
Yeah, so I think it depends what we mean when we say scale, because if we're talking about like their business is growing generally and they want to ramp up, that could come in several forms. It could be that there's high demand for their products, so they're ordering stock or having stock produced in larger quantities, so their margins become stronger on their products that they're selling, so they might then want to go back and review their target return on ad spend that they've set, because they might have set their ROAS when they were just starting out and they were manufacturing products or buying stock in small quantities, so their margins weren't as strong, so they might have said, okay, the ROAS needs to be 8 for this to make sense for us. But then as they grow, they might be putting in really large orders and getting a lower unit cost. So they might say, oh, actually, we can afford to lower the ROAS and still be profitable. And that means we can scale up because, as we've discussed already, you can run at higher volumes if you're willing to have a lower ROAS. So that's one side of things. The other side would be perhaps if you're expanding your product range. And there's two approaches to take here. I would recommend that if someone wanted to, although we don't typically advise this as we've discussed, but if someone wanted to stick to a rigid budget, if you were growing your product range within that same budget, that often gives an opportunity to improve the ROAS, because, as I already said, you're spreading your spend across a wider kind of audience, so people searching for a wider number of products or types of products. So that's a way that you can improve your ROAS, and perhaps maybe if you were running a campaign that wasn't quite achieving the ROAS you needed for the channel to be profitable for you, you might a client might say to us, okay, let's include this extra product range that we weren't previously targeting, and that might be a way that we can make the account more profitable. Yeah.
Oh, awesome, really good, really good. So that brings me to the end of the first episode. So yeah.
Exciting.
How was it? You enjoy it?
Yeah, it was great. Yeah.
No, that was a really good one. Lots of information, lots of value. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Rich will be on probably again very soon. very soon. Well, tell us below in the comments. Do you want Richard on again? Like, comment, subscribe, all of those amazing stuff. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for the next one coming out next week. See you later, guys.